Let's look at the same condensed income statement document that we looked at back in Study Objective 4. This time I want to use it to talk about a couple of key ratios that we can use to evaluate the health of a company's income statement. And over here in the right-hand column, I've just written down some numbers, and I calculated what's called a vertical analysis. With the income statement, there are actually scores and scores of ratios you can do to evaluate how well the company is performing. And in virtually all of those ratios, the net sales number is set equal to 100%. And then every other line item in the income statement can be expressed as a percentage of net sales. The two key calculations that are introduced in Study Objectives 6 and 7 are the gross profit rate and the profit margin ratio. The gross profit rate is calculated by taking the gross profit and dividing by net sales. In this case, 133 divided by 345 gives us 38.6%. That's again called the gross profit rate. The other calculation coming from Study Objective 7 is the profit margin. We actually did this back in Chapter 1, so that's not new. The profit margin is also called return on sales, or ROS. It's calculated by taking the very bottom line net income and dividing that by net sales. In this case, 10.5 divided by 345 gives us a 3% profit margin. Now, one thing I'd like you to be able to do here, in addition to just calculating, just crunching out the gross profit rate and the profit margin ratio, I'd like you to know what these things are used for and what might cause these ratios to be higher or lower. So, a couple things that they're used for. First off, companies are going to look at their ratios, comparing them to their competitors, and they might say, wow, how come our profit margin is lower than our competitors? What are we doing wrong? So they can see places that maybe they don't measure up, and how can we fix that? Another thing that they use these ratios for is to track their own trends over time. So let's say, for instance, they saw their profit margin starting to trend downward year after year after year. Our net income gets to be a smaller and smaller and smaller percentage of our net sales. Hey, something's wrong. You can't continue in a downward trend forever. So those are the kind of things that you do with the results. Now, when you're digging into analyzing why are these trends maybe happening, let's take a look at the gross profit rate. What would happen if, okay, now it's 38.6%, but what if last year it was higher, and the year before it was even higher and higher, and so we're seeing a downward trend? Well, what might be causing that? A couple things. First off, what if the costs aren't in our cost of goods sold? What if every year we have to keep paying more and more to our suppliers for goods and services that they're sending to us? Especially if we do not feel we can pass those cost increases on to our customers in terms of higher selling prices. Higher costs without raising our selling prices will start eroding away our gross profit. Another thing that could cause a decrease in our gross profit rate might be increased competition. You know, maybe every year we need to keep trying to lower our selling price just to match the competitors' prices. So we want to do as much as we can to try to hold up that gross profit to support the bottom line net income. Now, speaking of the bottom line, profit margin, what happens here is if you see, let's say, a downward trend over time, and let's say that the gross profit rate is fine. Maybe that's holding steady or even going up. So if that's fine, but your bottom line profit margin ratio is not good, then it's got to be something in the middle of our income statement. Most likely, some of these operating expenses. And that's where you'll want to dig into certain things like salaries or rent, advertising. Are there certain costs that are rising faster than our revenues are rising? And is there anything we can do to hold and contain those costs? So the key ratios, two of them that you need to know here from study objective 6 and 7, the gross profit rate and the profit margin.